The boardroom was silent except for the sound of my heels clicking against the marble floor. I pushed through the glass doors holding the final contract, the one I had negotiated with 3 investors. This was supposed to be our moment. Nathan's moment. Our moment together. I saw him sitting at the head of the table, and my heart jumped. Then I saw her. Celine. His assistant. She was pressed against him and they were kissing. Right there. In front of everyone. The investors stared. The board members froze. I couldn't move. Before I could say anything, Nathan stood up calmly like nothing had happened. He looked straight at me and said, "Jade is emotionally unstable. I'm taking full control of the company." Everyone nodded. No one asked if it was true. I felt the room spin around me. I sat in my car outside the building, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My mascara was running down my face in black streams. I whispered to myself, "My name is Jade Tate. I was the co-founder of Tate Innovations." But the words felt like a lie now. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and scrolled through my social media. The video was already trending. There I was, my face twisted in shock and pain, and underneath it all cruel comments. Crazy ex-wife. Unstable woman. She deserved it. Thousands of people I'd never met were judging me based on a 30-second clip. They didn't know that I had built this company with my own hands. They didn't know that I had given up everything. They only knew what Nathan had told them. I felt something inside me break and then something else ignite. When I got home, the movers were already there. Boxes were stacked by the front door. My furniture, my paintings, my books, everything was being packed into trucks. Nathan's lawyer handed me a folder and didn't make eye contact. "You've been removed from the property deed," he said coldly. "The house and all assets are registered under Mr. Tate's name. You have 48 hours to remove your personal items." I stood in my own home, the home I had decorated, the home I had dreamed about, and felt like a ghost. The kitchen where I'd made 1,000 dinners felt foreign now. The bedroom where we planned our future felt like a crime scene. I walked upstairs slowly and found a file on Nathan's desk labeled Stability Risk. Jade. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a fake psychological report. My name. My supposed diagnosis. A doctor's signature that didn't look real. The fake report spread online like poison. Nathan leaked it to bloggers and journalists, always anonymously, always carefully. Sources say Jade Tate has struggled with mental health issues. My phone exploded with calls I didn't answer. Old colleagues stopped texting back. Friends who I'd known for 10 years suddenly blocked me on social media. I lost my job at a consulting firm because they didn't want the drama. My mother-in-law posted on Facebook about how some women are just too unstable for success. I realized this wasn't just about divorce. This was about erasing me completely. Nathan wasn't just taking the company. He was taking my reputation, my credibility, my identity. Then I got a voicemail from Celine. Her voice was sweet, almost mocking. "You should have known your place, Jade. Nathan was always going to be bigger than you." I listened to it 5 times. Each time my jaw tightened a little more. I sat alone in my apartment thinking about how we started. Nathan was broke when we met. He had big dreams but empty pockets. I was working as a marketing director making good money and I loved him. So I gave it all up. I went part-time at my job so I could work on his startup for free. We skipped meals some nights so he could afford investor dinners. I remember eating peanut butter sandwiches while he wore expensive suits to meetings. I even sold my grandmother's house. That inheritance was supposed to be my security, but I signed the check over to him without hesitation. "When we make it," he'd promised, holding my face in his hands, "it will be ours forever. You'll never regret this." I believed him completely. I thought love meant sacrifice. I thought partnership meant he would remember what I'd given up. I was so stupid. His parents invited me to dinner, and I thought maybe they would help. Maybe they would tell him to be fair. I sat at their fancy dining room table, and his mother smiled at me like I was a stranger. "We always worried about your temper," she said, cutting her steak slowly. His father nodded. "Nathan told us you could get quite aggressive when things didn't go your way." I stared at them in shock. I'd never been aggressive a day in my life. Nathan had prepared them. He'd planted these lies weeks ago, maybe months ago. They were already convinced I was the villain before I even walked through the door. "Celine seems very good for the company," his mother continued. She's calm, stable, everything Nathan needs. His father leaned toward me and whispered, "Take the settlement quietly, Jade, before people see how truly unstable you really are." I left without finishing my meal. 3 months later, I was living in my car. My savings were gone. My apartment lease had ended and I couldn't afford a new one. I sat in the parking lot of a grocery store, scrolling through my phone, reading about Nathan's success. Tate Innovations reaches $50 million valuation. Nathan Tate named Entrepreneur of the Year. Pictures of him at fancy events smiling with Celine hanging on his arm. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. On his company's website, they had posted their latest business plan. I recognized every single word, every strategy, every idea. It was mine. The plan I had written at 3 in the morning while Nathan slept. The plan that had gotten him the first round of funding. They had copied it word for word and presented it as if it came from his genius mind. I sat in that car and cried until I had no tears left. But then something changed inside me. The humiliation turned into anger, and the anger turned into focus. I stopped crying. I started documenting. I printed every email I could access. Every financial report I had helped create. Every message where Nathan admitted he needed my ideas. I found old files on a backup drive, presentations I had made, strategies I had developed, client lists I had built. I organized everything into folders. I made timelines. I wrote down every lie I could remember. My revenge wasn't going to be loud or messy. It was going to be perfect. It was going to be built on facts. I got a job at a coffee shop just to survive, but every night I worked on my evidence. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I just worked. I gathered. I waited. One day, a woman walked into the coffee shop and ordered a cappuccino. It took me a moment to recognize her, Gina. She was one of Nathan's earliest investors. She sat down at a table in the corner, and when I brought her coffee, she grabbed my wrist gently. "I know what he did to you," she whispered. "He did the same thing to me. Took my money, took my ideas, and disappeared. I've been waiting for a way to expose him." My heart raced. She gave me her number. That night, Gina called me and introduced me to Liam, an investigative journalist who specialized in corporate fraud. Liam listened to my story for 3 hours without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "This is big, really big. Let me do some digging." He played me a recording. Somehow he'd gotten his hands on a voice memo of Nathan bragging to Celine. "She was stupid enough to trust me with her inheritance," Nathan's voice said, laughing. I felt sick and powerful at the same time. Liam wanted to create a podcast series exposing everything. My first instinct was to say no. A podcast felt cheap, like revenge gossip, not justice. But then Liam played me another recording. It was Celine's voice, and she was mocking my breakdown in the boardroom. "Did you see her face?" Celine laughed. She actually thought she mattered. I listened to that cruel laugh and I said yes to the podcast. Liam titled the first episode, "The Wife They Called Crazy." He structured it carefully, starting with my sacrifice, then showing the evidence piece by piece. He included recordings, emails, and my testimony. The episode took 2 hours. On the day it dropped, I was terrified. I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed all night. By morning, it had 100,000 downloads. By the end of the day, it was trending on social media. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. People who had judged me started changing their minds. Former colleagues reached out with messages saying things like, "I always knew something was off about him," and "I'm sorry I believed his lies." The narrative was shifting. On social media, people started sharing their own stories of manipulation and fraud. The hashtag #NotCrazy started trending, with thousands of women talking about times they'd been called unstable for speaking up. Nathan tried to fight back. He posted a video claiming I was out for revenge, and that I was trying to destroy a good man. But people didn't believe him anymore. His comment section was filled with angry responses. Then an email arrived in my inbox from an unknown address. The subject line said, "You deserve to know the truth." The email contained scanned documents that made my hands shake. Nathan had forged my signature on papers transferring company ownership. The forgery was done before the marriage officially ended, which meant he was planning this betrayal months in advance. This wasn't a sudden decision. This was calculated, premeditated, cruel. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, a woman named Nora Fields, who had been taking my case pro bono. She called me within an hour, her voice tight with controlled anger. "This is felony-level fraud," she said. "He didn't just leave you. He stole from you while making you look crazy." Nora told me to stay quiet. "Let him think he's winning," she said. "Let him get comfortable. Then we'll hit him where it really hurts, in the boardroom, in the courthouse, and in the court of public opinion. And we'll do it with evidence so solid that he can't wiggle out of it." Over the next 2 weeks, Nora worked her magic. She filed motions and sent subpoenas to every financial institution connected to Nathan's company. She hired a handwriting expert who confirmed that the signature on the transfer documents was definitely forged. Then she discovered something that made my heart skip. The psychological report that Nathan had used to destroy my reputation? It was signed by a doctor named Dr. Patterson. Except Dr. Patterson didn't exist. Nora tracked down the real Dr. Patterson in Boston, who had no knowledge of ever evaluating me. The entire diagnosis was fabricated. Nathan had created a fake doctor to make me look insane. It was fraud on top of fraud on top of fraud. I felt a cold certainty settle over me. He was going to go down. Legally. Publicly. Completely. Liam released the second podcast episode, titled The Woman They Called Crazy Returns. In it, he revealed the forged documents, the fake psychological report, and the non-existent doctor. He interviewed Nora, who explained the legal implications. He played clips of Nathan's own voice admitting to the fraud. The internet exploded. News outlets picked up the story. Within 48 hours, Nathan's face was on every major news channel. Not as a successful entrepreneur. As an alleged fraudster. He filed a restraining order against me, claiming I was harassing him. But the judge threw it out immediately after hearing the evidence. Instead, the judge ordered Nathan to pay for my legal fees. The power shift was happening in real time and I could feel it. Nathan's investors started pulling their money. Stockholders called emergency meetings. The company's value dropped by millions in days. Text messages leaked showing Nathan panicking, telling Celine that everything was falling apart. She started to crack under the pressure. Gina forwarded me an internal company email where the board was discussing removing Nathan as CEO. "We may need to make a change at the top," one board member wrote. "This scandal is destroying our reputation." Nathan's perfect image was shattering, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His lawyers tried to bury the story with cease and desist letters, but Nora fought back aggressively. Every move he made just made things worse. The more he tried to hide, the more people dug. It was like watching a man dig himself deeper into a hole while the whole world watched. Then something unexpected happened. Celine reached out to me through a private message. She wanted to meet. I was nervous, but Nora said it could be helpful. We met in a coffee shop far from the city, and Celine looked scared. "He's turning on me," she admitted, her voice shaking. "He blamed me for everything. He says I seduced him. He says I manipulated him. He's trying to make me look like the villain." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She handed me a phone, Nathan's burner phone that she'd stolen. "There's everything on here," she said. "Voice notes. Conversations with lawyers. Plans to hide money. Everything." She agreed to testify against Nathan if I could guarantee her protection. I promised Nora would handle it. Celine left the coffee shop looking relieved, like she'd finally put down a weight she'd been carrying. I listened to the voice notes on that burner phone with Nora sitting beside me. One recording was particularly damning. Nathan's voice, clear and confident. She was stupid enough to trust me with her inheritance. I took it all. Her reputation, her money, her future. And now she's gone, and nobody believes her because I told them she was crazy. Another recording was Nathan planning with a lawyer how to hide assets. Another was him bragging to a friend about how easily he'd manipulated me. Each recording was a nail in his coffin. Nora listened to all of them, taking notes, occasionally nodding. When we finished, she looked at me and said, "It's time. We go public. All of it. Everything." She scheduled a press conference for the following week. I felt nervous and ready at the same time. The press conference was held in a hotel ballroom downtown. Reporters filled every seat. Cameras flashed like lightning. Nora stood at the podium and laid out the evidence methodically. She showed the forged documents. She played the voice recordings. She presented the financial records proving fraud. She introduced Celine, who testified that Nathan had ordered her to forge my signature and create fake documents. With each piece of evidence, I watched journalists' faces change. This wasn't gossip anymore. This was a crime. This was real. Then Nora introduced me. I walked to the podium in a white dress, my hair pulled back neatly, my face calm. I didn't look angry. I looked peaceful. I told my story from the beginning, how I'd sacrificed everything, how I'd been betrayed, how I'd been silenced. I spoke for 15 minutes without crying. When I finished, the room erupted. Not in judgment, in support. Nathan watched it all on a live-streamed video in his office, and that's when his facade finally cracked. According to later reports, he started screaming and throwing things. His empire was collapsing in real time. Nathan's parents issued a statement within hours, claiming they had no idea what their son had been doing. They distanced themselves completely, saying they were shocked and disappointed by his behavior. They begged me not to mention their names in future interviews, worried about their own reputation. I sent them one message. You told me to stay quiet and accept the settlement. You believed his lies about me. You called me unstable. Now you know the truth, and you still care more about yourselves than about justice. I didn't wait for a response. I was done with people who had chosen Nathan over me when I needed them most. My own family, the family I'd fought to protect, had abandoned me. But I'd learned that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Actions do. And I was finally learning who my real allies were. The lawsuit was filed against Nathan Tate for fraud, embezzlement, defamation, and identity theft. The trial lasted 3 months. I sat in the courtroom every single day, wearing white or soft colors, looking calm and composed. Nathan looked increasingly desperate. His lawyers argued that he'd made mistakes but that his intentions were good. Their defense fell apart the moment Celine testified. She described how Nathan had told her exactly what to write and where to sign. She talked about how he'd laughed about fooling me. She cried on the witness stand, and even though she'd betrayed me, I felt something close to compassion for her. She was a victim too, just in a different way. The judge listened to everything. The evidence was overwhelming. On the final day, the jury took only 4 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Nathan to 5 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay me full restitution, $2.5 million. As the gavel came down, I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel joy. I felt something quieter and deeper. I felt justice. As Nathan was led away in handcuffs, he looked at me with eyes full of rage and disbelief. He whispered something I couldn't hear. Later, I learned he'd said, "You'll never win without me." I almost laughed. I'd already won. I'd won the moment I decided to stop being quiet. I'd won when I started gathering evidence. I'd won when I chose myself. Walking past him in that courtroom, I realized that his opinion of me didn't matter anymore. Nothing he said could ever hurt me again because I'd already survived the worst thing he could do. Betrayal from someone I trusted completely. 6 months later, I stood in a beautiful office space in the downtown district, looking at the sign on the door. Tate Collective. It was my company. Built from nothing. Built from pain. Built from survival. I'd used part of my settlement to launch a marketing consulting firm, and I'd made a promise to myself. I would only hire women who had been told they weren't good enough. Single mothers trying to rebuild their lives. Women who'd been fired unfairly. Women who'd been gaslit by their partners. Women who'd been called unstable, unreliable, crazy. I filled my team with brilliant women who'd been written off by everyone else. Within the first year, Tate Collective landed 3 major corporate clients. By the second year, we were one of the fastest growing consulting firms in the city. Investors lined up wanting to work with me, but I made sure to choose carefully. No men who reminded me of Nathan. No companies built on exploitation. Only people and projects that felt right in my gut. Then I got an email. Nathan had been released early on good behavior. He wanted to meet. Against Nora's advice, I agreed to one meeting. We met in the lobby of my office building. He was thinner, aged, nothing like the confident man I'd known. His eyes were desperate. "Jade," he said, "I'm sorry. I lost everything. My company, my freedom, my reputation. I understand now what I did to you. He begged for forgiveness. He said he'd made mistakes and learned his lessons. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I looked at him calmly and said, "So did I lose everything once? But I rebuilt it without you. You can rebuild too, Nathan. But not with me. Never with me." He reached out like he wanted to touch my arm, and I stepped back. "Goodbye, Nathan," I said, and I walked away. He called after me, "Jade, please. You won." I didn't turn around. He was right. I had won. A year later, I drove home to my new apartment overlooking the city skyline. It was a place I'd chosen for myself, decorated exactly how I wanted it. My office had expanded to 3 locations. Liam's podcast had won a journalism award for his investigation into corporate fraud. The world knew my story and the truth behind it. On my office wall, I hung the first dollar Tate Collective ever earned, framed in gold. Next to it, I hung the newspaper headline, "Wife Nathan Tate Called Crazy Becomes CEO of Thriving Company." I smiled every time I looked at it, not because of the revenge but because of what it represented. I'd taken everything Nathan had tried to use against me, my ambition, my intelligence, my strength, and I'd built something beautiful. I'd proven that the woman he'd called unstable was actually the strongest person he'd ever met. I stood on the stage of a women's conference, looking out at hundreds of faces. Young women, older women, women of every color and background. I told them my story, not as a victim seeking pity, but as a survivor sharing truth. "They will call you crazy when you stop being convenient," I said, my voice steady and clear. "They will question your mental health when you start questioning their honesty. They will try to silence you because your voice threatens their control. But here's what I learned. Your survival is not their responsibility. Your strength is not their gift. Your freedom is not negotiable." The room erupted in applause. Women stood up. Some cried. Many nodded like they understood exactly what I meant because they'd lived it too. As I stepped off stage, I smiled. Not the smile of someone who'd won a battle, but the smile of someone who'd finally become free. Nathan lost control of everything he tried to steal from me. I lost everything too, but I gained something better. I gained myself back. And that was the best revenge of all.